Hello everyone, it's Annie, and today I'm here with my May wrap-up. I read 19 books in May, a little bit less than usual, but honestly I'm happy with it because towards the end of the month I was just a little bit burned out. I really went a little bit too hard, I think, and I was happy with the amount of books I read. And I read some really amazing books. I had a great reading month. I think my average rating was almost 4.1 stars, which is just crazy high. It was great. I am very happy with that. So let's get started. So first, I want to start with the nonfiction books I read. The first nonfiction book was First They Killed My Father, which is a memoir of the Khmer Rouge takeover of Cambodia. And the author goes through her life. I believe it starts when she's 6, although she could have been a little bit older. I don't remember exactly. And it deals with her family. She was part of a middle-class family who lived in Phnom Penh, and she had to leave, and they went by foot. They walked for days to the countryside, where they were basically in hiding from the Khmer Rouge. And it deals with her and her sisters and her brothers, her whole family being separated, sometimes forcibly, sometimes for their own good, to stay alive. And it's just such a heartbreaking book. She went through so much. She had to work in a labor camp, and her sister died of sickness because there wasn't any medicine to go around. It was really eye-opening because while I did know a little bit about the Khmer Rouge, I've never read a memoir about someone who went through it, you know? And if you are at all interested in Cambodia or Southeast Asia, Asian history in general, I really recommend you read this book. And then I read Adnan's story. This, I didn't rate it because it's a nonfiction, or maybe I did, I don't know, but it would be around a 3.5 for me. It was good. However, I don't know if you guys know the story of Adnan. He was tried and convicted as the murderer of his ex-girlfriend, a Korean-American girl who was found dead in a park, and a lot of people believe that he was innocent and he was the wrong man. I honestly don't know. I wanted some information about the case because I really like true crime, and I had never actually heard of this case before. It was the first season of the true crime podcast called Serial, if you guys have listened to that. I haven't, but this book was written by his family friend. It's very biased, let's just say that. And I don't really know what to believe because it is written from a very biased standpoint. And also just the organization of the book was a little weird. So I don't know. I found myself kind of wishing she would just get to the point a lot of the time. She kind of rambled a lot. And there was also a lot about her personal life, which I didn't feel had a place in the book at all because the book's name is literally Adnan's story, not Rabia's story. So I was a little confused about why that was even in there, but I digress. It was a very interesting book. If you're into true crime, you'd probably like it. And then I have The Magical Language of Others, which was beautiful. I learned after I read this that the author is actually a poet, which makes total sense. The language in this book is so beautiful and really, really poetic. I absolutely loved it. It's super short. It was like 5 hours or 4 hours to listen to the audiobook, and it was so beautiful. It's a collection, mostly a collection of letters that her mother sent her, because while growing up, her parents moved to Korea and left her and her brother in America to go make money to support their children. So she grew up with her grandmother, I believe, and seeing the letters that her mother wrote to her while they were separated and reading about her feelings on the matter and her relationship with her mother was really special, and I really recommend this memoir. And then I read another memoir, which I have to say is probably my favorite read of the month. It was Inferno by Catherine Cho. This book knocked my socks off. It is a memoir about this woman, Catherine Cho, who suffered from postpartum psychosis about a few months after the birth of her first son. It was so raw, and she was so vulnerable. She was just so honest about everything, and I don't think I ever have read such an honest memoir. Like, it really was amazing to read, and just seeing what she experienced while going through this period of psychosis and the pain it caused her and also her family and her husband, the people around her. It was really sad, but also kind of uplifting, and it was just, I'm not doing it justice. I know that I'm not doing it justice. It was such a good memoir, really, like, stellar, really my favorite read of this month. And it's a subject that people should really know more about. The book says that over 80% of women will suffer from postpartum depression. That is an insane number. Like, I did not know that at all. It was just insane to learn that statistic, and it's such a misunderstood thing. People really need to read this. Please, if you read any book from this wrap-up, read this one. And then I read my last memoir, which was Two Trees Make a Forest. It was also very short, but it wasn't really what I was thinking. It was fine. It combined the author's problem with maybe not knowing where she fit in. She grew up in the UK, but her family is from Taiwan. But also, they came from mainland China, so is she Chinese? Is she Taiwanese? Is she Chinese but from Taiwan, but now she's English? And she kind of deals with that identity crisis aspect of it, which was very interesting. She talks about her family history, which was very interesting, and why they came over to Taiwan during the communist takeover of China. Also, the book deals a lot with the history of Taiwan itself, and also the history of its geology and like flora and fauna, which is very interesting stuff. However, I think that this book would have been more successful if either it had been organized better or if it had just been two separate books entirely, because I felt like there was a bit of a disconnect between the nature writing aspect of it and the family memoir aspect of it. Both subjects were very interesting to me, but I just felt like they didn't fit together. Yes, they both had Taiwan as a tie-in, which I totally understand, but if the book is going to be one book, I feel like it needed a little bit more. Like, it needed to be longer, maybe, to have them tie in and make more sense with each other, because it just felt kind of jarring. Like, first she would be talking about her grandfather and his life in the army, and then she would jump to, like, her finding this endangered bird. And both were interesting, but they didn't really have much to do with each other. So, yeah, that's how I felt about this. But I'm glad I read it because I learned a lot about Taiwan. And now I want to talk about the two new releases I read this month. First, I read The Forest of Stolen Girls by June He. I gave this 4 stars. It was released back in April. I really enjoyed this book. It was so good. I also read The Silence of Bones, I believe it's called, by June He, and this was way better in my opinion. This was not as confusing. Like, it's still a mystery thriller novel set in historical Korea, which is just so interesting. Such an interesting and unique setting. I loved it. I adored the main character of this novel. She was so cool. I loved her. She, at first, at the beginning, she is disguised as a nobleman in order to be safe traveling alone as a woman, which was so cool. I loved it. I loved her. And she also has a very interesting relationship dynamic with her sister, which was interesting to me. And I just thought it was great. But I don't want to give anything away about the mystery, but basically she is searching for her father, who is a detective, a police detective, who went to Jeju Island in search of the suspect that committed these kidnappings of women. When the main character and her sister were children, they were also kidnapped by maybe the same criminal. That's why their father went in search of this guy, because the crime seems so similar. So it's very interesting, very creepy, and I thought it was great. I really loved it. I wouldn't say it was a big surprise at the end, but I definitely would say it's worth the read just to see how the main character goes about solving the mystery and goes about finding her father. It's so interesting, and Junher is also going to come out with another book in 2022 called The Red Palace, which I am also excited for. This book has solidified that I will read anything Junher writes, so that's a sign that you should read this. And then the second new release was The Luck of the Titanic by Stacey Lee. This was my least favorite book I read this month. It was just disappointing. It's primarily about these two twins, and they are Cantonese, half white, and they live in the UK, and they are going to travel to New York on the Titanic. So, I mean, because of that, you already know the ending. In my opinion, the depiction of the ship sinking was the best part of the book, and that only came around like 66% through, and I was just kind of waiting for that the whole time because I just was not interested in anything that was going on before then. It was just really disappointing. First of all, this book is marketed as YA, but it was written extremely young, just a very juvenile tone, and it really should have been middle grade in my opinion. However, just a warning to people, there is a really out of place attempted sexual assault scene that just really caught me off guard, and especially because of the juvenile tone of the book, it really surprised me. And it is attempted, so nothing graphic really happens, but it just surprised me and felt really out of place. And it's about these twins who were acrobats, and also I just don't like circuses. So that's my personal problem with the book. That's not, a problem with the actual objective writing of the book. But I don't know, I also felt that there was a bit of an issue here because there is a side character who is a lesbian who helps the main character quite a bit, but they aren't together, and instead the main character has a very fast-paced relationship with a man who she has zero chemistry with, and that just really annoyed me. I don't want to seem like I will hate a book if it has a straight romance. I definitely don't, but it just really annoyed me because it was very obvious to me that the side character would have been a better fit for this girl, and that left a bad taste in my mouth, to be honest. It didn't make me feel good. So there you go. And then I read the Gumiho duology by Kat Cho. I am glad that I read this. I rated them both 3 stars, but let's be honest, they're just fun. It was just fun. It was a fun duology about a girl who is a nine-tailed fox spirit, a Gumiho, and she lives in Seoul, and her romance with this guy who I don't really like. That's the one thing. All the romances, not just the main one, but also the one that is the main romance in the second book between a dokkebi and a regular human girl, the romances were both very toxic. And that is the main point of the book, is to be invested in the romance, and I just wasn't because they were both really toxic. At least in my opinion. The first one wasn't as toxic as the second one, but I don't know, in my opinion, if a guy tells you that, oh, he hurts everyone he gets close to, so he's not gonna, you know, he can't do this, like, just run away. Like, don't even try. Like, do not, just absolutely run in the other direction. Like, so I really felt hard. It was hard for me to have any investment in the romances, but I really liked the mythology aspect and the Gumiho Dokebi aspect. I really liked that. I also, in the second book, there's a really interesting relationship dynamic between the main girl and her mother. The mother had her at a very young age, so the mother is treating her more as a friend and confidant rather than a daughter. And it was really interesting, and honestly I wish that was kind of explored more rather than her toxic romance. I was really interested in that. But all in all, they were fun reads. Like, really, you know, it was fine, and I enjoyed them. I also read the entire Poppy Wars series. I have a vlog where I vlogged all about that, so please check it out because I won't be going in depth about them here. Please check out that vlog. I worked hard on it and it was so much fun. I loved these books. I absolutely loved this series, and I can't believe it took me so long to read it. I will read anything R.F. Kuang writes forever. I love this so much. I also read Brother's Keeper by Julie Lee. This was a beautiful middle grade novel about a young girl and her younger brother who have to travel basically almost all on foot from North Korea to Busan in South Korea during the outbreak of the Korean War. And it was so sad. Like, there are some horrific scenes in this book, and just, it was so sad. Please, like, be prepared if you read this. Very, very sad stuff, but it was so moving. And of course, like, actually, maybe it doesn't end how you thought it would. I don't know if it does. I was a little bit surprised, actually, but it was so good. I loved it so much, and I have nothing else to say except that this is really, more people should be reading this, and if you want a good historical fiction middle grade, you should read this one. And then I read The Weight of Our Sky by Hannah Alkoff, all about the 1969 race riots in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. We follow the main character, Mel, who actually suffers from OCD, and she is dealing with being in the middle of these riots while also suffering from symptoms of OCD. And that was really interesting. I thought it was a very interesting twist, and I thought this book was great. I gave it 5 stars. I mean, it wasn't perfect, but it was so emotional and very sad and upsetting at times, but I thought it dealt with the reality really well, and it didn't shy away from anything. Even though it is kind of on the young side of YA, I thought it handled everything really well. And I felt like I learned a lot about Malaysia, which is good, and I really recommend this, and also it's beautiful. Okay, a few more books, guys. Then I read Other Words for Home by Jasmine Morga, which I read for the Buzzwordathon this month, and I really thought it was great. I gave it 4 stars. I thought it was a really nice, not historical fiction, it's happening now. It was a really nice, heartwarming, but also emotional middle grade novel about a refugee girl from Syria who moves to America with her mother and unfortunately has to leave her father behind and her brother behind. And that dynamic is really interesting and was really emotional and upsetting to read about. But you read about her kind of getting on with life in America and learning how to speak English better and how to be an American, whatever that means. And it was very interesting, and seeing how she interacts with her American side of her family and how she misses Syria and her brother and her father. It was really heartwarming and just something that everyone should read. It's a very quick read, it's written in verse, and it's a beautiful book. And then I read Confessions, which is a thriller novel translated from Japanese, and I am so glad I finally read this. I gave it 5 stars. I watched the movie of it many years ago. Probably I was too young for it, to be honest, but the movie is great. The book is amazing. I loved it. It was just so unique. I didn't know what to expect, but it's written in this really unique way that there's no dialogue. It's just written as like one person's perspective, and you kind of infer that other people are speaking. It's so good. The first part is from the teacher's perspective. Now, the teacher of this class is a single mother, and her daughter was tragically murdered on school grounds, and she suspects that 2 students in her class committed this murder. But things happen. I don't want to spoil it. And so the first part is from her perspective, and then we have parts from one other girl in the class, and then the 2 suspects. Oh my god, it was so good. Like, I did not want to stop reading. I think I read this in one day. It was so captivating, just really fast-paced, and really a very unique thriller, and I highly recommend it. Then we have Nine Fox Gambit by Yoon-ha Lee. I gave this 4 stars. I think I have to reread this because I'm gonna be honest, I didn't understand most of what happened. Which is so upsetting because this was a 5-star prediction for me, but there was so much math. And I learned that Yoon-ha Lee is actually, like, he studied math, which is cool. Like, I think having math as a big aspect of a sci-fi aliens culture is very interesting. But it really created a big barrier for me to actually understand. And, like, I'm not bad at math. I was fine at math, but it's just so way above my skill level. I don't know. It was really confusing. But I thought that the interstellar, battles were really cool. And I loved the central character and her dealings with this general's ghost, let's say. So the premise of this book is that this commander or whoever, I don't remember any of their names, I'm sorry. This commander is in disgrace, and the only way to gain back her favor is to recapture the giant Fortress of Needles or whatever it's called that's on the cover. And in order to do that, she is like mentally fused with the soul of this long dead murderous general who like committed genocide while he was alive or something, and it was really interesting. That aspect was very, very cool. But yeah, it was a little bit confusing for me, and I like hard sci-fi, but this was just, I don't know, it was confusing, but I still really liked it. I mean, 4 stars is a great rating. But I'm a little disappointed because I wanted it to be 5 stars. But I still recommend this. And if you are kind of scared of math, but you want to try Yoon-ha Lee, I definitely recommend Dragon Pearl. That is a great, great book. It's a middle grade, but it's kind of on the higher side of middle grade. And it is so good. It's also a sci-fi, but it's not confusing at all because it's a middle grade. So I could understand that one very easily. And then I read These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. I finally read it. Gave it 4 stars. Loved it. The only reason it's not a 5 stars is because no one told me about the bugs. I didn't know that it had so many bugs, and it was gross. It was so gross. Like, I was not a fan of that. But I really liked Juliet. Didn't really care about Roma, but whatever. I really loved Juliet. I thought she was awesome. Very morally gray and like such a cool lady. I loved her. And I thought the setting, 1920 Shanghai, was so cool. I loved the historical fiction aspect of it. I thought it was great, and I cannot wait for the second book. I can't wait. I think it comes out in December. Like, Chloe Gong has got me. Like, she has hooked me, hook, line, and sinker. I am going to read everything she writes. And the last book I have to talk about was actually my least favorite of the month. I actually forgot about it until I just read it on my list. It was An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. I did not like this book at all. The only reason I read it is because it was the group read for the Star Wars Readathon, May the Force Read With You. I should have known. I should have known. It's a YA dystopian fantasy romance. That combination is always something that I hate, and I don't know why I thought it would be different this time. It wasn't. I gave it a 2 stars. I was so unimpressed. I skimmed the second half of the book, gotta be honest. Just nothing interesting was happening. I did not care about the love triangle, and I thought the world building, like, people say the world building is great. It's really not. Like, it's not good. I thought it was just, it didn't make sense. Like, it was intriguing. It could have made sense, but it just, like, okay, the main character is part of this class of people called the Scholars, who are, like, treated like trash and they're enslaved, but why? We never know why. And it is a series, so we probably learn in the next books, but I feel like that's something we should learn right up front. You know what I mean? It just didn't make sense. Like, why are scholars the lowest rung? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. It just, I also didn't like the main character. I mean, she was fine. I really didn't care one way or the other. The main guy character, though, was awful. I did not like him. I thought his relationship with his mother could have been way deeper and way more interesting, but it wasn't. And I thought his other girl that he was kind of interested in, he treated her awfully. And also, all of the girls in this book were just, like, their storylines had so much to do with sexual assault, it was ridiculous. Like, I actually am surprised that this book was written by a woman. It was just very, like, I was done. I don't get it. I don't get the hype of this. I'm sorry. I should have known. Again, should have known, but now I know. So if I ever pick up a YA dystopian fantasy romance, please remind me not to. That is it for my May wrap-up. Thank you guys so much for watching. Again, I had so many great books this May. Please let me know down below what your favorite book you read in May was. I'm very interested to know. And if you have any opinions about these books, also let me know that. So I will see you in the next video. If you liked this, please don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. And I'll see you next time. Bye!